Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, is somebody that I am, or at least wasn't, a huge fan of, especially in 2020, the primary election. I felt in many ways that he's not president. Although, again, I said that about Josh Shapiro. I'll say this about Pete. I'll say it about Gavin Newsom. There are people like them that posture themselves. They're good rhetorically, and they're really strong at pushing back against Republican nonsense, frankly. But Pete Buttigieg wasn't my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, even probably choice in 2020, the primary election. However, Pete Buttigieg absolutely destroys the Republicans here in this hearing, where he's pushing back against Republicans in the House. This is about climate change, because of course we all know that climate change is not real. Climate change is a hoax, of course. As Trump said, it's a Chinese hoax. Let's see what Pete has to say here.
I don't know the percentage of atmospheric gases.
You don't know the percent of the atmosphere.
What I can tell you is that climate change is real. We got to do something about it.
Yeah, this one's called autumn, sir. So
I'm sorry?
This one's called autumn right now, so yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't make out what you said, sir.
This climate...
He is saying this climate is autumn, or AKA the fall.
Change right now is called autumn, yes.
Yeah, that's the seasons changing, which respectively is not the same thing as the climate changing. And as somebody who...
Same thing as weather, by the way.
...is hoping to retire in the 2050s and who has kids who will be old enough to ask me as they're getting to their 30s, whether we did enough to deal with climate change or whether we just did what was convenient, I take that really seriously.
Reclaiming my time. Thank you, Mrs. Secretary. The trillions and trillions we're going to cost our kids to change.
The trillions and trillions we're going to cost our kids by switching our economy over to a green economy, a sustainable economy, which creates jobs, has higher wages, creates a competitive advantage within the supply chain of the world, of course, creating the cars, the charging stations that we would then export as goods. No. That's going to cost trillions of dollars. And we're going to stay on the exact same economic model that we have now, where we rely heavily on China, which I thought Republicans wanted to compete with China, but I guess they don't. If we wanted to compete with China, we would invest in sustainable energy. We would invest in electric vehicles. We would invest in jobs, good paying jobs, blue collar jobs here in America. That's what the CHIPS Act was so good. It's because we're undercutting China's production of the computer chips and all the computer parts that we need for motherboards, for cars, for all the different aspects of computers. It's vital that we invest in American jobs if we want to be competitive in the 21st century and, frankly, beyond that. But no, that's a radical notion. You want to invest in sustainable energy jobs? Why would you do that? Why would you want to create solar panels in America when we can create them in China? Why would you want to create charging stations in Michigan when we can create them in China or Vietnam or Mexico? You see, like, the double standard here is so apparent because the same people that want to wrap themselves in the flag and claim that they're so patriotic, they don't give a damn about providing a good paying job to their neighbor. Which there's no, the actual cost increase of cars or any good for that matter, they did this with Papa John's pizzas, was extremely, extremely low. And they talked about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It was an extremely low percentage per pizza. Oh, I have to pay 5 cents more for a pizza? Oh, God. That might add up to $1 over the year of all the pizzas that I'm shoving down my gullet. How could I not afford that? Or how could I afford that? Rather than taking the the actual patriotic, and yes, you could actually be a progressive patriot and say, I want to invest in good paying American jobs that provide healthcare, a living wage, retirement benefits for our American workers. They work a regular 40-hour-a-week job. They get overtime for the hours that they work over that because that's what they deserve. That is what we establish as labor law in this country. And we don't have to exploit third world countries for their labor, their natural resources. We can do both. It is patriotic to believe and to fight for these things. Let's see what else he has to say in this clip.
A tiny percentage of CO2 will bankrupt all of us, bankrupt our economy, and ship it to China for all the other reasons.
So that's the other thing. It's like he's saying it'll bankrupt us and it'll ship our economy to China, although not taking action is allowing China to take action first on creating the things that are going to be sold to Americans. So rather than being like, no, we're going to invest in we're going to subsidize oil and gas. We're not going to subsidize solar panel production. We're not going to, even if, is this a compromise? Nuclear, if we wanted to invest in nuclear power, we could do that. We could do that. That is something we could look at. But no. Nope. Just want to do what we've been doing and burn those fossil fuels. Burn, baby, burn. Drill, baby, drill.
So I yield back, Mr.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Huffman.
Mr. Secretary, it's good to see you. You can see that I serve here in Congress with some of the greatest minds of the 19th century. Thank you.
That's a good one. Here's the second clip. Let me pull it up. Here is, I believe this is Scott Perry.
This is the government.
Here in Pennsylvania. Going back and forth with Pete Buttigieg again. Pete pushing back hard. You love to see it.
Funding the destruction of our own automotive industry. And I hope you know that approximately 2/3 of EV owners make over $100,000 a year. My bosses don't make that.
Red herring. Red herring. Of course, Mr. Perry here wants to say my bosses don't make that, but he does make that. He makes well over that, first of all. That's the first part. Second part, electric vehicles were more expensive. Yes. It's like saying, like, you wanted a flat screen TV? Are you kidding me? They're $5,000 in 2004. Even if they existed at that point. It was like plasma TVs. But today you could get a flat screen TV for like $250. God forbid, you want to lower the cost over time? You want to actually invest in the production of electric vehicles to lower the cost, make them more affordable for the average American, which then incentivizes them to purchase them? You want to give them tax credits for that? What are you, a socialist?
I don't know if you can justify or how you justify forcing my constituents to pay for EVs and EV infrastructure for coastal elites and wealthy people, but somehow you do.
Well, I need to point out that wealthy people were specifically excluded from the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, I
wish
just
we could have
gave
had
you the
your
number.
support on
Do you
cutting the cost
dispute
of
that
these.
2/3 of EV owners are owned by
Which, by the way, I just want to say, like, the Inflation Reduction Act did means test it, and this is precisely the thing. It's like when you cover everybody, it makes it way less hard. It makes it way harder to attack a bill. But when you means test it, they still don't give a shit. Republicans will just make stuff up. They'll lie and just be like, oh, you're just helping your coastal elitist friends. Yeah, my coastal elitist friends that elected Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Or that elected, I forget his name, in Wisconsin. And yes, it actually did reduce inflation. If you actually look at the rate of inflation, it's been lower ever since. Every single month, for the most part, it has gone down consistently over the last year.
People over 100,000 that make over 100,000. Do you
Sure, because
dispute that?
the first EVs, of course, were
Do you
acquired by
dispute
more-
that? I
no,
mean,
but that number's going down.
Those are the facts. It doesn't matter if they're going down.
It doesn't matter if it's going down.
Now,
why were
the
you
folks
against
that
cutting
I
the price of
represent
EVs?
can't afford them
I
today,
apologize that he's Rick Harrisoning too.
sir.
Why were you against cutting their costs?
All these factors. I'm not against cutting their costs. The market should do it. But you want the government, you want my taxpayers to pay to cut the cost, which isn't cutting the cost.
you were of
it's
the view-
subsidizing.
Here's where Pete's gonna push back really hard. And I really like this answer.
Respectfully,
Because,
Congressman,
sir,
if you were of
with
the
all
view
these
that there should be
factors
no
combined,
subsidy to propulsion
all these
vehicles, then are
factors
you against
combined
oil and gas
mean
subsidies?
that for
You
every
believe that oil
EV
and gas
sold, sir,
subsidies
at a
should-
loss, that the cost of the, as my colleague on the other side, the gas guzzling pickup truck is higher now to pay for the loss as you kill your administration and you in particular kill the auto industry. And I'll remind you, in 2008, after the financial crisis, the federal government bailed out this industry. So
The Obama administration, by the way.
while you're here today, will you commit and will you pledge to oppose any effort to bail out the auto industry after you force it into bankruptcy again? Will you do that today, sir?
Congressman, I got started in politics when
I guess the answer is no. I
Indiana
yield the
factory was at risk of being
Yeah, that's also I like this answer too, because Pete's not from the coasts. He is not from New York. He's not from California. He's from Indiana.
shut down because an elected official in my state tried to block the administration from saving Chrysler. I got involved and stood with the UAW to save those jobs, and I'll always be with auto jobs being preserved.
That's a great answer. And by the way, there's a pretty rock solid support and reasoning to have bailed out the auto industry. Now, the argument that could be had is, should we have bailed out the big banks that caused the recession? That's another debate. But bailing out the auto industry, it's not really that big of a debate. Like Democrats, Republicans, I would assume we all want American jobs. Maybe assuming makes an ass out of you and me, but I would assume that Democrats and Republicans want American jobs, but could be wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, would you like to finish your statement?
Sure, thank you, and I'll try to be as concise as I can. There are some people who I suppose believe there should be no subsidies for anything involving transportation. And I assume in the spirit of philosophical consistency, they would be against subsidizing oil and gas, as well as being against subsidizing Americans being able to afford an EV. There are others who believe that we should force Americans to be in the technology of the past forever.
Yep.
And then there's this administration which recognizes that the world is moving to EVs, with or without us. And those EVs are either going to be made by Chinese workers or they're going to be made by American workers. And we respect the UAW standing up at the dawn of a new chapter in the automotive industry that created my hometown to make sure that those are not just American jobs, but good paying American jobs.
Thank you very much. I apologize.
One of the best answers he could have gave. It is so obvious to see that the Republicans on this board, the Republicans that are running for Congress, and everywhere, from state houses to Senate to president, they are going to prioritize not the workers, not average Joe, not the guy that supposedly is going to pick himself up by his bootstraps, which is literally impossible, by the way. No. They don't want to support, Joe Six-Pack or Jane Six-Pack, I guess. I don't I'm trying to not be super stereotypical. And it is just so funny to see that the Republicans don't want to actually take any action to support the people that they supposedly represent. They supposedly represent. And yes, the irony of a co-conspirator to sedition and insurrection acting as some sort of prosecutor. For those who don't know, Mr. Perry, Congressman Perry, was a big supporter of the insurrection that happened on January 6th, 2021, which, of course, led to the second impeachment of the 4-time indicted, 2 times impeached, civilly liable rapist Donald J. Trump. But that's, besides the point. We have a lot of evidence that Hunter Biden is corrupt. So we have to make sure that we impeach Joe Biden, because that makes total logical sense. But I'll say this in closing here, that again, someone that I wasn't the biggest fan of, Pete Buttigieg. I still find myself being like, there is some parts of this that don't feel right. And he, as Secretary of Transportation, has done some great, some not so good, and everything in between. And we can honestly be able to say, like, some things handled with the airlines, not so great. Some things handled with labor rights, excellent. The same thing with the Biden administration. The Biden administration on labor rights has been incredible. And seeing that the UAW, because we didn't really talk about the UAW going on strike because it happened after the program last week. So it's been like a week kind of building up to this. But the UAW, the United Auto Workers, going out on strike, targeted strikes across the country. And Will, to your question, didn't Biden get accused of rape? There has been accusations of that, but there has been no civil prosecution that has found Biden liable. There's been no criminal prosecution that has found him guilty. And in fact, there are many reports. And look, I'll say this, I'll be completely honest with you. In 2020, when stuff came out about it, I was like, this should be disqualifying. This should be blah, 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 right? As more came out, more facts and evidence came out, it appears that it is a false accusation. And believe me, I support when someone says that there is a false accusation against usually a man. They should be punished for that too. We could probably agree on that. But of course, Donald Trump was found civilly liable for rape because it was out of the statute of limitations for a criminal prosecution, and it's harder to prove in a criminal court of law, especially after years later. It's the same thing you see with Russell Brand. To be fair, I'm not covering that in the program right now because 1, we don't have all the facts, and 2, he's not a political figure in the same way. But that is exactly the type of whataboutism that is exemplified by the Republicans.